So Texas is a national championship contender, right? Well, that's certainly how it looks. And people are questioning their resume after their 20-10 win at Arkansas this past week. I'm not. They had a bad day against Georgia. Okay, Georgia's a team that can win the national championship. So you weren't quite up to par. Only lost by 15 points after getting down big at the half and staged a comeback a little bit. But again, didn't have a great day. Happened to come against Georgia earlier this year. And then people will couple that performance with this performance against Arkansas and say, oh man, look how hard it was to put away Arkansas. I mean, they had the lead early and then they just couldn't put them away and it was 20-10 and whatnot. I've got no vibe on Texas here. I haven't shifted my perception of the Longhorns because I thought Arkansas would cover and Texas would win. So exactly what I thought would play out, played out in Fayetteville on Saturday, early afternoon, late morning, depending on which part of the country you are watching this football game from. But Quinn Ewers is good. And then there's Quinn Ewers and he's not as good. And he kind of goes back and forth. But guess what? He's been the same guy the entire time that he has been Texas' starting quarterback. He really hasn't changed that much. Sure, you could say he's a little better now than he used to be, but he's always had ebbs and flows. The offense has always had good halves and really, really bad ones where they go dormant. That's been Texas the whole time. And last year, they were in the college football playoff semifinal. And they were one play away from getting to play for a national championship. Yeah, they probably would have lost to Michigan, but guess what? They were still at that level. So if you look at Quinn Ewers or the Texas offense, say, oh my gosh, there's only 20 points. Yeah, the Arkansas defense isn't very good. You should have been able to put up more than 20. But I don't expect you to play your best football every single week. And when you are on the road against an Arkansas team that I don't think is bad, I think is pretty darn solid. I've watched Arkansas a good amount this year. They're not a great football team. They're not a bad one either. You give me a road environment like that, late in the season, guys can be dinged up a little bit. It's hard. It's a long season. This is the grinding month of November, and Texas went in there and grinded out a win. So I don't downgrade Texas in terms of how I view them compared to everybody else and other national title contenders because they went out there and won a game 20-10. It wasn't as bad as Oregon. Oregon played for the second straight week, not a great game. Now, last week against Maryland, they won by 21, so it didn't raise a lot of eyebrows. But the sloppiness, the inconsistencies, they have a couple of injuries. They have a bye week this week, very well timed. This is a very, very well timed bye week for Dan Lanning and company because Tez Johnson at wide receiver, pretty clear the passing game needs him to be at, it's really to just be effective. In the two games without, they were good against Michigan. He missed most of that game, but in the last two games without him, it hasn't quite been there. And Oregon played 8 straight Big Ten games over the last 8 weeks. Seemed to have caught up with them a little bit on Saturday night against Wisconsin. Still, the game didn't need to be as close as it was. Oregon made mistakes in several key instances that let Wisconsin hang around. Have I radically changed my opinion of Oregon? No, but I was definitely less impressed with Oregon's win than Texas's win. So if you were looking at Texas and saying, well, they only won 20-10, like, it's hard. It is hard to go on the road and beat a quality team. Wisconsin, Arkansas, I bet if you put those two teams on the field, it'd be a really fun, competitive football game. Arkansas would probably win. I don't know that for certain. If you play that game at Camp Randall, I don't know. Arkansas's offense had some comings and goings, as everybody else has throughout the year. There's this widespread expectation. This is why I'm bringing these two teams up in this particular segment before I talk about a couple other national title contenders who played well. There is no team that plays great and dominates every single week. Indiana, story of the year, 10-0. They've got game day this week in Columbus against Ohio State. It's the biggest game in the history of Indiana football. They were steamrolling everyone, right? Then they beat Michigan at home by 5. It's never easy every week. Washington last year, they were the national runners-up. They lost the national title game. It was hard every single week, it felt like. They were playing one-possession games against anybody and everybody. Against Oregon State, against Washington State. Time and time again, they found a way to win. There is value in that. If you stack up those performances over the course of the year, you have a BYU-Miami situation where I look at you and say, this is not sustainable. But the majority of Texas's games this year haven't looked like what it did against Arkansas. The majority of Oregon's games this year haven't looked like what it did against Wisconsin. You're not going to play the highest level of football where you beat the crap out of someone who you're capable of winning by a lot of points against, who you have a big point spread against going into the game. That can set a lot of people's expectations. That doesn't mean that that's the sole determining factor of how you should look at a particular matchup. So I think Texas was better than Oregon. Neither team looked like they were at their best, but they found a way to win, and there is value in that. And Texas has Kentucky this week. I hope they don't overlook Kentucky. Oregon has bye week, and, well, you can't lose to bye week. Can you beat bye week? You can have more good things happen during a bye week than bad. So Oregon, Texas, a little bit of shaky, but not overly worried about them. So then there are two national title contenders, in some people's view, that are at the other end of the spectrum. I apparently need to stop picking Navy to cover against good teams, because Navy got beat pretty bad by Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. Thought they would do the same thing against Tulane that I thought they'd do against Notre Dame. Yeah, they didn't. Tulane got a big win. I'll talk about that more a little bit later on. But Notre Dame beats Virginia 35-14. Game wasn't actually that close. That was a backdoor cover. Line closed at 21.5. Vegas goated forever and always. But Virginia, not a great team, but not a terrible team. And your impression of Notre Dame, you probably haven't watched a lot of Notre Dame games. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Notre Dame football compared to what I did early in the season when they were playing Texas A&M or when they lost to NIU. Yeah, watched a lot of those games. I bet a lot of you did too. But as the season progresses, they're starting to fall in the back of your mind. They're starting to fade into the background, onto the back burner mentally for people. But are you looking at how they're beating people? I was wondering earlier this year, and I said on this very show, Notre Dame playing this style of football offensively is not sustainable. They're not scoring enough points. Mike Denbrock and Riley Leonard looks like there's a disconnect. Well, it looks a heck of a lot better now. They beat Virginia 35-14. They're putting up 40s and 50s. They have a 60-point game this year. Notre Dame is playing some really good football. Really good football. So you should keep an eye on the Irish there, because if they win the rest of their games, they'll be in the college football playoff. They won't have a conference championship. They'll probably be the number 6. They could be the number 5 seed. I'd imagine, given that there will be a loser in the Big Ten championship game, I imagine they'll probably be 6, but they could be 5. They'll be hosting a playoff game. But they still have to go to USC, and I don't think that game's going to be entirely easy to win. Lastly, of the national title contender bunch who either looked not so good or good, Ohio State is in the good camp. It wasn't always good. It was 7-0 Northwestern. 7-0 Northwest. Yeah, and then Ohio State said, all right, enough of this. Enough of this nonsense. The Wildcats are not ending our season here. And they win the game 31-7. So Ohio State has just the one loss going into this matchup with Indiana this week. I've got plenty of confidence in the Buckeyes. And by the way, I'm not some Indiana hater. I'm sure someone could find a way to dub me that because, well, you guys find a way to dub me whatever you feel like. And you know what? That's fine. That's the way that this particular game is played. I'm okay with it. But Ohio State feels like a team that continues to find its momentum more and more. And every time I look up, Jeremiah Smith is making a good play. And if they can run the ball, I like the Ohio State running game. I liked it more before the season than I have during the season. I think there's another gear. If they unlock that offense has got a crazy number of weapons, and they can be really good. But the defense, that's about what we thought it would be. That defense looks really good. They blocked a punt against Northwestern. That jump-started the whole game. Northwestern was up 7-0. You went, wait, it's the second quarter. Northwestern's up by a touchdown. Oh, no, never mind. Ohio State's got it. Defense can lock in like few in the country can. So the Buckeyes and the Irish, they look good. The Ducks and the Longhorns, they didn't look quite as good. But most importantly, they continued to win. I imagine the rankings will reflect that on Tuesday, and they very well should.